AdYack.
You're listening to AdYack. AdYack is the official podcast of the AAF Greater Lehigh Valley Ad Club. Our mission is to inspire creativity and enhance the professional development of the advertising and marketing communities where we live and work. I'm your host, Bill Childs, and I'll talk with artists, designers, writers, directors, photographers, along with those who work in a creative capacity. Our aim here is to serve as a creative resource to help you stay informed, entertained, and above all, inspired. But first, I want to thank ASR Media. We appreciate your support and collaboration. Today on the podcast, I have someone who I have wanted to talk to for quite some time, and thankfully, our schedules finally aligned. OutFront Studios National Creative Director, Eddy Herty. Eddy is highly respected in the advertising industry and is a frequent guest speaker at industry-leading events, including the Outdoor Advertising Association of America, the Infinity Film Festival, How Design Live, and the New York Ad Club. He's also been a judge for the ADDY Awards, the OAAA OBIE Awards, the One Show, and the Clios. Herty has dedicated his career to helping businesses leverage the selling power of out-of-home through dynamic creative execution and establishing a client-first environment at OutFront. As a result, Eddy and his team are changing the perception of out-of-home one billboard at a time, as they have the unique ability to slice through the mediocrity that permeates most of the media landscape. We yack it up on many topics that include best practices when presenting big ideas, hand-painted versus digitally printed vinyls, how the pandemic saw outdoors visibility increase, to the process he uses to uncover a brand's truth. He also shares how he inspires the 50-person design team at OutFront. Eddy also tells the story of how he evolved from not really understanding the power of outdoor when he was a young designer to presently leading OutFront Studios to new creative heights. Herty and his team are doing impressive work that's helping clients reinvent themselves in an ever-changing media world through the power of great design and messaging. Herty believes outdoor is the one medium that can scream to thousands and whisper to one. Here is my AdYack with Eddy Herty. All right, Eddy Herty, welcome to AdYack, man.
Thanks for having me, man. Pleasure.
How are you?
Doing good.
Friday, good. Yes, I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. I know you're busy, and I'm excited to talk to you because I know a little bit about you. I don't know a lot about you. I'm hoping to learn a lot more as we get into this podcast today. So you are the VP National Creative Director of OutFront Studios.
That is my long-winded title. Yes.
So tell me what your day-to-day is. What do you do?
Day-to-day, man. So I guess real quick, the team that I get to lead is about 50 across the country. That's groups that are in hubs like in LA or New Jersey, New York, and that's some people that are just kind of one-offs. Art directors in like a Kansas City or
right.
A Houston kind of thing. So it's working with those teams, working with our regional creative directors. There's a good bit of national business that we're helping, whether it's directly working with that national client or working with their agency, where we're helping them, understand out of home best practices, what they can do. Cause it's kind of one of those things like, you don't, if you don't know what tools are in the toolbox, then you just don't know.
Right. So you're not really, are you designing day to day or are you just overseeing other creatives designing?
Yes. Both, all those, right?
Okay.
So it's overseeing some stuff, but I guess our team's a little unique in the sense that we're not micromanagers. And so when you hear 50 designers, like some may think, oh, wow, that's a big team. But when you spread those 50 across the entire country and realize there's, over 500,000 out-of-home canvases that we have to fill with advertising, and there's at any given moment over 1,000 jobs that my team's working on, all of a sudden it's not a lot of people. And we have to have people that we trust to be that art director in their market to meet those clients' needs. So a lot of times it's an art director reaching out to me saying, hey, does this stink? Is this cool? Sometimes I'm reaching out to them saying like, hey, am I completely off the mark? Am I like too old for this? Like, am I speaking the right language?
Right.
We really work as a community there. So yes, I'm designing stuff. Sometimes it is actual the advertising, right? Whether I'm pinch hitting for a market that's down, or it is like a national brand or a regional brand. Sometimes I'm working on internal marketing pieces.
Well, I was going
Or
to ask you, who does the stuff for the OutFront brand? Does that also fall under you?
parts of it falls under me. We have, I lead up the studios, and we have this other team called X Labs that is more dedicated to the digital experience. Part of their umbrella is also, I don't know if you've seen some of our Front Street episodes where it's, us doing about a minute, 2-3 minute long recap of a campaign or of a trend or out of home, fill in the blank. They'll be developing a lot of those, a lot of the internal videos. So some of it falls under me, some of it's over there. It's a very, I guess the best way to put it is organic, right? Like we are a team.
Well, where would someone go to watch those? If someone wanted to watch that, those.
If you go to OutFront.com, we have what's called a content hub.
Okay.
And if you go there, there's all sorts of, whether it's our brand builders where we're talking to actual clients. We have giving examples in specific industries.
Okay.
So maybe it's like home improvement, or maybe it's the health industry, whatever the case is.
Yeah. Is it like case studies? Case studies?
There's a bit of case study in there in the marketing section of it, but a lot of it, that's the marketing portion, but the creative portion is really what my team focuses on, which is understanding and working with clients, right? Having that discovery call, getting to understand their brand's truth, and then how we go about developing the campaign.
Okay. Well, full disclosure, I'm a fan of outdoor. Ever since I worked at Adams Outdoor, I was there for 2 years in the Lehigh Valley, fell in love with it. When I worked at the agency that I worked at for 6 years, if a campaign or a project that we were going to work on had an outdoor in the brief, we always started with the outdoor, because we figured if we could solve it there and make it be exactly what it needs to be, and have it be solid, and we knew that we could expand on that into the other media that we were going to use. So I just want to put that out there that I am a huge fan. And yeah, and I mean, just from a pure messaging standpoint, right? I don't think there's anything that touches it, because there are so many things that you can do. And I'm telling you this, like, you don't know, around.
I love hearing it, man.
Around extensions and around just graphics and messaging. And there really is, for me, nothing better than a well-crafted billboard message, an outdoor message. It's pure gold. So talk to me about what you do to make sure that clients are using the medium properly. I know that's a big question, but what do you do to make sure that when you're talking to a client and they want to do some outdoor, that you're educating them in a way that they're going to understand it's not a newspaper ad on a pole. It's a lot more complicated than that. And listen, not all clients are all the same size and all as savvy as some of the others that are used to using this medium. So talk to me about that a little bit.
Absolutely, man. And that, first off, totally agree. Like, if you can nail that out of home piece, you can scale it, right? Yep. It can fit any medium, which that's why it's gold. And I kind of start there, right? Like, if we're working with an agency or, whoever it is, they have their perceptions of what out of home is, because, I had my perceptions. I used to think it was garbage. I absolutely hated it.
Okay.
I really hated it. I'll usually start a meeting, depending on who it is, with like, hey, anyone on this call or in this room, whatever the case is, grow up to want to be a billboard designer. And like, no, like there's maybe the one-off person like you, right? That's like, yeah, me, but most of them like, no, that's not a dream I've ever had in my life. So I kind of meet them where they're at, saying, look, I get it. Like, your perception of what out of home is garbage. And, totally understand that. And I thought the same thing, but I show them kind of real examples. Like, this is, something that brand X sent us, and yeah, it looks like garbage. But if we look at it and we actually take the time to discuss and listen to the client, what they're trying to do, we'll realize that, click to the next slide, the 3 words, the 5 words, the pure visual design, the gold that you're talking about,
Oh yeah.
you'll realize this is what they're saying. And all of a sudden that light bulb goes off a little bit. It's kind of one of my regional creative directors, or actually now associate creative director, he always said, those before and after books, like you show someone a before and after, nobody wants to be the before. Nobody wants to be the quote unquote ugly design, and it clicks in their head a lot easier. But I would say the main thing is, like any relationship you have, you listen. It's not so, you get that out of the way, it's saying like, look, if you don't understand out of home, that's fine. You don't have to. You trusting us, that's all it really takes. And I'm just here to listen to you. And we'll ask a few questions. And really, it's that discovery of their brand's purpose, right? Their brand's truth that they're sharing with us. And if I can get them excited about what they do every day, right? So they're going to an office or to their basement or wherever they work for 8 hours a day and pouring their heart into this business, like they're doing it for a reason. If they really hated it, they could get up and leave. So I want to get to the reason why they're there, why they're working on that. And if I can capture that brand purpose, right, I can figure out how to make that meaningful connection to the people that actually benefit from whatever that brand is, that product, that service, that thing. And then if I can make that connection work, then it's going to become this, this engagement that audience has with that thing. It's going to be, they're going to connect with this because it's relevant to them. It connects, and
Sure.
This engagement is going to be kind of second nature to them. They're going to want to pursue this. And once you have that purpose nailed down, you're connecting in a meaningful way, you're getting that audience to engage with them. That is going to leave this lasting impression with the people. So if I can understand that through this call, and granted, I'm not asking these specific questions, I'm just letting them talk, and just like we're doing here, where does this conversation go? Then we can present back to them, our recommendations, and we can use the words that they gave us, that they defined as their brand purpose in that presentation. And 9 times out of 10, that clicks for them. And it's kind of a home run. There's few revisions, if any. But, it is a challenge if you're going to go at it, shoving something in somebody's face, right? Like, this is what you need to do. You need to follow these rules. We actually wrote a book called Good Things to Know that we hand out to agencies. Because I'll get that, like, what color should I use? What size font? Like all these rules, right, that they want to follow.
Yep.
And my answer to them is, I don't know. Like, I have no idea. What are you doing? What are you trying to do? Let's start there. So this book is basically kind of a, stop, pause, rewind. Let's talk about what you're doing. You think about
I guess the question I'm getting at is, I know for me, I've been in this situation. I'm sure you've been in this situation where you have the discovery, you listen to what they're saying, you talk, what they're trying to accomplish, what the mission is, what the brand is trying to do. And then you have your own kind of discovery period before you start designing, where you're kind of like doing some research, you're kind of, and then it starts to kind of coalesce, and then you marinate on it. But then something magical can happen. If it doesn't always happen, you want it to happen, but you nail it, and you know it, and you nailed it, and it's right for them, and and that's where for me, it's like, sometimes it's like that, letting them know, like, when you present, like, this is who you are, even if you don't believe it, this is really who you are, and it's funny. I've heard this analogy once about how a lot of what we do is we're on the outside of the medicine bottle, and we can read the label because we're on the outside. The customer's the client is on the inside because they're so close to it. It's, they're just too close to the business. And our job is, like, we kind of, squat down and we get up close and we're like, what you're telling me is not what's on the outside of this label. So what do you do about those? I mean, how do you make sure that when you present those ones that you nailed it, and it's what they should be doing, but then there's that moment of, you have to present that now. What do you do in that space? I'm curious.
So I think, anytime you design that campaign or campaigns where it's like, no, either any of these directions is right for you. And, if you don't present that right, you're kind of lost, right? Like you've lost already.
Yep.
So, if the client sees it before you present it, right? If you send it over and they like, forget it, like it's over.
So many times I would see reps when I was at Adams, they would be putting the designs in a FedEx envelope. And if I would happen to be seeing that, I go, what are you doing? Oh, we're sending it out to the client. I'm like, you're not going to talk about it? You're not going to present it? So I said, you know what? Look, I want to go on these calls. If these people are local and they will talk to me, I want to go out and present, because I just thought there's just so much time and effort being put into these campaigns. I want to talk about the process. I want to talk about how we got there. I want to talk about why we did what we did. And it started, we had success with it. So I think to your point, I think it's all about really how it gets presented. You can't just go walk in, everybody sits down, flip it over and go, there you go. What do you think?
No.
You like it? You're done.
No,
you're done at that point.
Because a huge part of it is the trust, right? Like they, whether it's like just a 10% of their budget, or some cases, a lot of these local businesses, this is like the budget, like they're giving you everything and they really have to trust you. So, you have to put effort into that presentation. And, the way people feel trust is feeling heard, like feeling understood. So again, going back to that discovery conversation, like if I don't have that piece of it, the percentage of this going through just starts dropping quickly. Because when we go to present, our team's trained to say like, okay, look, we talked about this, you said this, you told me that this was super important, and you're using their words. And then you take that and you transition to, so that got us thinking that, wow, like at the core of your brand truth, right? Is X, right? So like example, we were working with Crown Royal, their brand truth is it's what you give, right? Like it's not about, it's about the time that you give, right? It's not about this drink that you're drinking or whatever, even though that's the obvious, like we want to sell more of this, but it's about that, not so much what you do, but what you give. So as we thought about that, we realized, that's their purpose, but the way they can connect that purpose is sometimes the most valuable gift is our time, right? And really, given that, it's a drink, that's the product, it's spending time with these people. And what are those moments that we're giving in our time, right? So, whatever the case is, you start walking through this process of thought, and you start, you watch their face, and it's like it's an event, right? As you're presenting, you're looking at people's faces.
Yes.
It's definitely a lot more difficult in Zoom world, where some people don't have the camera on and you're kind of guessing, or their faces disappear, but you're reading them, you're making sure that like they're kind of, wait, I see where you're going with this. Like, yeah, I did say that. Yeah, no, that is what we're about. And then you present it, right? And now look, ideally that's when they're like all of a sudden the visuals, you don't even have to explain why you did what you did anymore, because you just already went through that process and it's very clear why you did what you did. It's the idea that they were looking for. Now I think, just because, ideally, this is good, you're done, off the print, or it's posting, or it's sending whatever publication. But knowing that, if you're serious about, what you do, right? It's not about like just hitting home runs one after the other, right? It's about really partnering with that brand, with that client, and growing together. Like they're challenging you and your design ability, but you're partnering with them to help them grow, help them expand their business. So, I'm a huge fan of baby steps, is what I'm getting at. Like, maybe they're not going with this. Maybe they're not there yet. We're all on a completely different journey. We're on different points in our lives, levels of trust, whatever it is. Maybe they're not there yet, but they see where they could be. And even if I don't get here, but like we go here and we started like way off my screen here, way down here on the floor.
Yeah.
That's a huge win. And that's them giving me some trust, giving the company some trust. And we're taking them to that next level. So I think that is a big piece of it, right? Even if a design posts and it's breaking like a handful of rules of don't do that on outdoor, but I've clarified that with the client, but they got rid of a lot of other stuff that I was worried about. And we're taking these steps and they're going to see it's going to work just that much better. And next time, I'm thrilled. Like I'm excited with that.
Well, I'll tell you what I started to notice too, and I started to bring this into my presentations. There's an uncomfortableness that happens when you're seeing something for the first time, okay? There's that awkward silence, right? You're looking at something for the first time. You just did your pre-sell and you set it up beautifully. You got the client saying, yes, we did say that. Yes, we do want that. Yes, that is part, right? You get them all kind of conditioned. And I started to realize that there was an uncomfortable silence that I had to kind of deal with. And, it's that old adage, he who speaks first loses. Right. So I started to say this. I would say, now, look, I'm going to show you this design, but I'm going to tell you right now, you're going to be uncomfortable. So I just removed that right out of the room. So that whole emotion just left the room. So now when I turn it over, I told them they were going to be uncomfortable. Right. So it helps a little bit. And then if I did everything right, everything you just talked about, and I turn it over, I wait. I don't say anything. I don't say we can change it. What do you do? I just let it sit there. And that's what we're talking about right here is a whole other art form. Presenting ideas to clients. It's an art form. And there's people that do it well, and there's people that don't. And I've seen it done. I've seen it all. I've seen the in the FedEx envelope sent through the mail. And guess what? 2 weeks later, they're back up in the art room going, yeah, that client didn't like that at all. I'm like, big surprise. Maybe next time, maybe I can go out. And it wasn't like an ego thing. It was just more of like, look, let me help you go out. And it was so funny because we would come out of these calls and the account executives would be like, oh my God, they ate up every word you said. They were like transfixed. You were like, I said, well, they're talking to the person that actually did the design. I think they want to hear what we have to say. So, and here's something I want to ask your thought on this. Controversial. I don't believe the customer is always right. I don't. I think most cases they're wrong. But we have this, is it just because is the customer always right because they're paying the money? I mean, I don't know. What is your thought on that? You could disagree with me on that. I just don't always think the customer is always right. I think a lot of times they're misinformed, or they don't have the courage to kind of take a risk on a big idea. They're just afraid. What's your thoughts on that?
The customer is always right when it comes to their profession. And even then, maybe not, right? But like, that's my stance. If I'm going in to talk to somebody, I'm learning from you because you've been a plumber for 30 years, or because you've sold in the alcohol industry for 20 years, whatever it is. Like, you're the expert. You're always right in that profession.
100% with that. Yes.
Yeah. I ask you to pay the same respect to me and trust me and let me be 100% right all the time in my industry. But yeah, I think people get nervous, they get scared. It's a lot of money for some,
sure,
whatever the case is, and they can't let go. But
I guess what I'm saying is it seems like our industry is the one industry where all the experts are the people who don't work in it. Does that make sense? In other words, when I order a steak and I say I want it medium rare, I don't go back to the chef and go, "What are you doing?" "Oh, I'm making a steak. It's medium rare." No. Turn it now. No, it's not ready to be turned. No, I want it turned now. Like, why? Why is this field have that type of level? You know what I mean? Have you experienced
absolutely. That? It's getting less and less. But I think it comes from us realizing more and more that it's expectations that are set, right? So again, the presenting, right? Because I will see those emails where it's like, let me know if you have any changes. So just
You just
that,
handed it to them, right?
yeah, that perception is like, we didn't get it right. I'm looking to your advice. So like you're telling them they're the expert. So it's a messed up expectation.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if, an ideal situation that we see more and more of, definitely have plenty of times where it's not, but ideal situation is, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Client, I'd like you to meet Mr. and Mrs. Art Director. They work at an award-winning creative department. These
Mm-hmm.
people are the best, whatever it is. I
Yeah,
don't
sure.
care if it's like the local award or the national award, like
Yeah.
AE, build up your creative department because they're your creative department. You need to show trust in them. Otherwise, the client will never show trust in them. So if you started off that way, where it's like, hey, they're great. A lot of success with people they've worked with in the past. I'm happy to put you in their capable hands. They have some questions for you. You set it up that way. You set up expectations. And then, a step further is, when we present, before we present, we'll say, look, we have kind of a revision policy. We'll design the initial campaign and then we'll give you 2 more revisions after that. There's a fee, but look, here's the thing. We just listened to you. I truly understand what you do. I feel confident. I'll spit back a couple things that they said to where they're like, okay, yeah, dude did the listen. He gets it. I'm setting that expectation that like, I get it. Like, you're not going to need those extra revisions. Yeah, we've won these awards. Yeah, we've been doing this for X amount of years, which I don't even like saying that because I could, I'm supposed to be flossing for the last 15 years, but I'm not very good at that. So like, I don't even say that, but
right.
You set those expectations to where like, they feel like, okay, yeah, I don't have to worry about this. I'll let them do their thing.
Right.
But if it goes in where it's like, yeah, we'll get you something back in the next couple of days and then we'll talk and see if it's the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're going to want their picture and 20 bullet points on.
Right. Well, let's switch gears. Let me switch gears for a second. My understanding, and you're certainly a lot closer to it. Outdoor as a medium is it's going strong. It really has not is not waned. In fact, if anything, it's growing. Talk to me about that a little bit, if you can.
Absolutely. It has. I think the core reason for that is, people we're rooted in community, right? Like you
Sure.
live in a town.
Yep.
You have your grocery stores you go to. You have your favorite restaurants, bars. Your kids go to a school. Like everything in your life is part of a community of some way, shape, or form. Out of home is communal.
Very much.
It's the town crier. I don't care if we went through, say, a pandemic. You still were driving out. You had to go get food. You had to go do X, Y, and Z. You had to go get gas. There's things we had to do. And when you were out in your community, that is the thing that still was there. That was the thing that never turned off. That was the dependable truth, right? That you couldn't shut off. It was growing strong before the pandemic. During the pandemic, I think it kind of, shoved that stake in the ground even more so, and claimed that no, like we're not going here. We're dependable. We're not, dependent on X, Y, and Z. Like we're always up here, and people just saw it. Like you can't.
I mean, I think it's the one media, I believe, the one traditional media taking digital off the table that is growing year over year.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, it is the only one that's still cranking up there.
Yeah.
And it's actually reinforcing digital, right? So like mobile ads on your phone, like they're doing well, but they do 50% better when paired with an out-of-home ad, which goes back to that trust, right? Like there's something about, you see movie stars taking selfies with the billboards, like they're not doing that with a magazine ad or anything.
Yeah.
Something about having your face on a billboard means you made it. So I don't care if you're a movie star or a local person, local company, that is the big thing, right? That means you made it, like you're a success.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, how is OutFront transitioned or with digital, like with digital being such a big player that it is, I don't mean just digital, boards. What have you guys done to kind of stay current and with that and bring that into the fold with the regular, the regular traditional, structures?
So at the core of out of home, it's being timely, right? So whether you're static or digital out of home, or just digital online advertising, like it has to be timely. No one, like especially digital. Uh, so it's really been an investment in being able to do that better. So what I mean, you go to New York City or Boston or DC, our live boards, our digital screens that we have in the transit stations there, being able to do timely content that is relevant, not just the time of day
Mm-hmm.
or the time
Sure.
of the week, but relevant in your location, right? So we're able to, we have our I mentioned XLabs before. They run a program called Moments, where it's a Fresh Direct. We're working with them right now,
Mm-hmm.
where you can connect the local restaurants, um, uh, recipes, ingredients, whatever. This timely information for that time of day, in that moment, right? So maybe I'm going to go off track, but
Mm-hmm.
it again all about being timely. When you think about people doing buys, on the digital side, like when understand the back end of that on programmatic and saying, hey, I want X amount of impressions
Sure.
for this audience, it kind of just chops them up behind the scenes without you knowing. And out of home has never really been a big part of that, just because we have different measuring systems for the most part. At least we did in the past.
Mm-hmm.
We're kind of addressing that now to where we can be a part of that programmatic buy, right? Where
Sure.
another big piece of that is the resizing of ads, right? So that's always a big piece. Like you said, like you can't take an online ad that has like 10 words and just squish it up on a billboard and it looks like a hot
Right.
mess.
Right. Right.
So we started a partnership. I can't say with who just yet because I
Mm-hmm.
don't think it's officially been released, but where it's uh, uh, digital content optimization, where let's say Dunkin' Donuts does a buy,
Yep.
right, and the agency doesn't have time to size it for the 30 different out of home
Right.
canvases, where we can use this product and it will digitally optimize that to the right sizes, automatically,
Oh, wow.
which is cool
Yeah.
for certain buys,
Yeah.
right? Whereas you look at some of these other designs that we do, that it's very like intricate details and the lighting or the layering
Yep.
of different
Mm-hmm.
pieces, it doesn't work as well.
Mm-hmm.
Which that's where my team comes in to make sure it's sized correctly and looks right for everything.
Well, let
But
me ask you this: what do you do to keep your team motivated? How do you keep them inspired? Is there anything you do in terms of like that you can share, to just kind of keep I mean, you have a team of 50, but like you're not all in the same place. So what do you do to kind of keep that creative culture high?
make sure they know they have a voice. That is something I love about OutFront is, just because I'm national creative director doesn't mean that I'm always the face of creative. And then I should never be. Like, this thing should not be at the face of everything. I want to know that Alexis Caban in Berkeley, California can speak on our brand builder on alcohol, right? I want to know
Right.
that Sandra in Detroit can talk about home improvement. I want them to know that if they have an idea, they can rise up and talk about it. Like Adrian in our Atlanta office here with me, she's, her thing is environment.
Okay.
So she's working on an Earth Day campaign. So she has that voice that goes beyond the typical local jobs. It's going to a national thing, and just showing them how they can, speak up and
Okay.
actually following through and letting them be heard. I think that's the biggest thing. Of course, giving them cool projects when I can, outside of the lawyer or the plastic
Mm-hmm.
surgeon or whatever. But also letting them understand that, it's only not a cool project when you decide it's not a cool project, right? Like,
Right.
I don't care if it is a lawyer. Like, how do we
Mm-hmm.
make the lawyer
Yep.
just crazy cool and a superhero? Like, how do we go about changing the perception? Just like I was saying, my perception about out of home used to be such garbage.
Right. Right.
Wasn't until I fully understood what its brand's truth was, what its purpose was, what it could do, that I was like, wow, oh my gosh, like it should really be this. Same thing with every client. Like, as long as we have that approach, it stays exciting, you know?
Yeah. I think one of the things that really blew me away when I worked at Adams in the Lehigh Valley for 2 years was it was still at a time where they were still hand painting boards.
Mm-hmm.
So to be able to go into the back shop and see a 14 by 48 stretched across a wall, and it's a Rolling Rock like ad with a can and a bottle sitting in a stream. I mean, talk about the world's largest oil painting. I mean, it was, these guys were amazing. And I remember they had some Bob Sterner, Pete Toth, Craig Stevens, Al Federer, these guys.
Craig Stevens.
Yeah, Craig Stevens still.
That's a good friend of mine.
Good, great guy, wonderful guy, great artist. And we still had the option of, if they could hand paint it, we could give it to them, as opposed to just sending it out and being digitally printed. And Eddy, I just felt like there was such a craft when there was a hand painting, the time that it took. I mean, you had to make sure the design was right. And once they started painting it, and when that went up on the road, oh my God, was that a difference? I don't care what type of digital printers they're using now to print. You cannot get the same effect off of a hand brush paint one shot, and I miss the fact that there's not a lot of hand painted boards anymore. Now hand painted walls are starting to come back. You're seeing a lot of that,
huge.
Which to me, that's the craft of outdoor, are those hand painted signs. Did you get to experience any of that in any of your
No, I got into the industry after the hand painted part was kind of dying down. However, my love is oil painting, like just, aside, like I love the oil paint. So I definitely have that appreciation for it. And like I said, Craig Stevens and some other painters are good friends, and understanding where they came, seeing the old pictures. But I mean, even now, right? Like, there's he's now a regional creative director. He still goes out and, whenever he gets a design up, he'll go out and see it, post and take pictures. And, if you mess up really big, but if you nail it, it's beautiful. And that craft piece, like, that is something we pride ourselves on. Like, I will dive in and look at my team's shadows or whatever it is, like under the lighting, and, kind of grill them on that, because like it does matter. It looks like such a tiny detail that surely you're not going to see on a billboard, but like you notice when it's wrong. Like, notice when the sun's not shining right. Like it does matter. And that alone is that exciting thing. And back to your other question about the digital piece, that is part of the excitement too. Things like spatial out of home, where granted you have to stand in a specific spot to see the crazy 3D thing pop out of you, because if you stand over here, it's going to look like a weird organism, kind of hot mess, all distorted. But like new developments like that is just amazing. Again, our X-Labs team developing digital where it's truly immersive, right? So instead of scanning a QR code and like seeing an AR thing, which that's cool, by the way, that's really cool. They've just launched something where like you can scan the QR code from the digital screen that everyone's seeing and decide kind of a choose your own adventure that will then play on the screen for everyone to see. So it's kind of flipping it a little bit.
That's amazing. That's awesome.
That's something you can't do anywhere else.
No.
You can't put a 30-foot prop on anything else except for a billboard. You can't do like a LumaFilm kind of backlighting situation to that scale anywhere else. Like, there's just some things that are not possible, not achievable, literally anywhere else. And that is that inspiring thing that I just, we always joke, like, once you drink the Kool-Aid, like That's it. Like
Yeah.
with out of home, either you absolutely hate it, which honestly, I've only met like maybe 2 or 3 people that have been in the industry that hated it. Most of us, even if you try to leave, you come back.
Well, I'll
And I
tell you,
love
one of
it.
the
I wouldn't
cool,
leave
you
it.
mentioned Craig Stevens. I mean, I mentioned him, but I didn't know that you knew him. Cool story there. When he was a billboard painter at Adams for the 2 years that I was there. But then he totally reinvented himself. He taught himself
Yep.
Photoshop. He taught himself Illustrator. He was classically trained illustrator, and went up into the Northeast market and totally reinvented the whole market through design. It was amazing what he did. I was like, Craig, oh my God, like you drive through the market and it was just, you just saw all the cool, I mean, he was really doing it. And he, I consider him a dear friend and just an inspiration really for how he transitioned himself from just, he didn't see himself as just a sign painter. He knew he could do more. And he knew he was about more, and he did it. And he did it on his own. He would come up to the shop after he was done, or to the art room after he was done painting, and he would be like, "Oh, what are you doing there?" Like, "Oh, how did you do that illustrate?" He taught himself how to design, and then he took his classical training from the Barnstone Studios and the Golden Section and all that, and mashed it together, and just became. It's like unbelievable. I can't say enough about the guy. He's awesome.
And then he'd go and build his own props too on the side, which is crazy.
Yeah. To talk about a Renaissance man, right? I'll tell you, one of the stories I wanted to tell you was when I was at Adams. I got a brief for this cable company that wanted to look like a sponsor of this music festival, except they weren't, but they wanted to look like one. So I pulled a page out of the, I think it was the '84 Olympics with Nike, when they bought all the boards around the location, showed athletes and a logo. That was it. They didn't need to say a word, right? So I kind of was inspired by that campaign, used the brand colors. So the boards were nothing but a musician on one corner, an entire board of nothing but black, and then a logo right in the corner. That's it. Do the campaign. Marketing director, oh my God, we love it. They're going to do 10 vinyls and 100 posters. They're going to blanket the market, right? So it goes off, comes back. They're like, we're in, we're going to do this. All we have to do is add 1-800-RING-R, whatever the name was, or the company. They wanted their 1-800 number, right? And we're like, yeah, no, we're not doing it. And they're like, no, what do you mean you're not doing it? You have to do it. We're paying for this. Again, this is the customer is always right conversation, right? So the GM at the time, John Hayes, said, no, can't do it. And they were like, what do you mean you can't do it? We're paying for these boards. Now, at the time, this was about $75,000 in 1 month, right? In 1 month spend. And he just drew the line in the sand. And this went back and forth for weeks. And finally, they said, I even said to John, I said, John, look, I appreciate what you're doing here. I'll make it small. I'll gray it out. I'll push it to the back. He's like, no, Bill, we're not going to ruin what could potentially be the best billboard campaign this market's ever seen. Not doing it. I don't care. It's not about money. And I was like, wow, okay. So he said to me the one day, he said, get me a bunch of quotes. You're like a quote guy. Get me a bunch of quotes on like taking risk and being bold. And I thought this was a crazy move. We started faxing them to their corporate office just blindly. Be bold, and mighty forces will come to your aid. And a little Adams logo at the bottom, right? A little branding and just quotes about taking risk and what happens if you don't take a risk or kind of. Finally, they caved. They said, okay, it can go up without the number. And it went up, and it won a national marketing award from OAAA because everyone that saw that campaign assumed that they were a sponsor of Music Fest, because you would have had to helicopter in to Music Fest to not see the posters or the vinyls on the road. And to me, that just showed how the power of saying everything without a single word. And I remember a couple of years after that, I was at the agency and I'm sitting there and I'm sitting in front of the marketing person for the competing cable company, right? And he didn't know I worked for did other work. And this campaign came up and he was talking about it. And he said, I told the company, the other cable company, they were saying like, those boards are ridiculous. They don't say anything. And he said, no, they say everything. And I just sat there and was just like, I just let him go until he was done. And I said, I actually did that.
Tell me more.
Yeah, right. I did that campaign. And to me, that's just, yeah. And holding your line in the sand, you know, John Hayes could have very easily caved, taken the 75, put it up. It still would have looked good. I mean, well, no, it wouldn't have looked good. It would have looked terrible with this 1-800 number. But he held fast, and it just the power of like kind of saying like, no, we're not going to let you wreck this
Right.
amazing campaign. And the person who was the marketing director from that campaign, she's moved on to other jobs, but she always takes that framed picture of one of the vinyls wherever she goes, and it's always hanging in her office every time. She's like, I started my new job, it's hanging in my office in the wall. So to me, like, there is nothing more powerful than good design, and especially when a message connects. And in this case, it connected to a music festival in downtown Bethlehem, where over 1 million people come over a 10-day period. And these guys looked like a sponsor of that festival without uttering a single word.
I love that story. That's a great story, man.
I mean, it was true. I couldn't believe it happened. And it was great. So what else? What's on your horizon? What do you got coming up? I mean, what are you working on that's exciting? Or even tell me about a campaign recently that got you excited. I know they all get you excited, but one that maybe stood out that's like, I mean, you got anything like that?
Well, I mean, on one side, like what I'm working on, like I guess the the role of creative director, you know, you go to school to eventually want to be a creative director, but they don't really teach you all the stuff that actually goes along with being a creative director, the management side and the system side, and figuring out how, you know, you can help your team succeed. So just internally revamping a little bit of our creative process, you know, questioning how we go about things, if we can make it better. So that actually is really exciting to me.
Sure.
Rethinking that creative, we call ours a creative map, but basically the creative brief, how we can get more to the heart of what it is in a more efficient time and help our sales team succeed more. So that is a big piece that I'm working on right now. But yeah, so with the OBIEs, you know, so the OAAA awards.
Sure.
Yeah, I was excited, definitely surprised. But we got 22 finalists this year, which was
congratulations.
Really nice. Yeah. A lot of work that I'm very proud of the team for doing there. One of the campaigns in there, and it's going to sound maybe not as exciting to everybody else, but for me, it really kind of captures the essence of out of home. Because everything, you hear so much talk about digital this, digital that, big, huge props. Like we had some that won, this thing we did in Nashville, had mannequins out on the board and neon lights. And it was kind of this big, to-do production. It was really cool. But the one that really got me is something we did for shutters.com, which is, exactly what it sounds like, a company for shutters. So like, it's not even like a sexy brand, like blind shutters, but it was the out of home that really just, to me, it was the core of out of home, like you were saying, kind of that visual, and it just followed our process to the T, and the end result had the client just like, I didn't say it on the call, but I completely doubted y'all. I've heard this promise before that it's going to be great and trust us, blah, blah, blah. And, what are these guys going to do for a shutters company? And y'all came through, and I'm really blown away. And we even redesigned their logo for them. And they used the campaign on their homepage of the website. But basically, long story short, shutters, this guy, going through the discovery conversation. Actually, this isn't a short story, so forgive me. Cut me off if you need to. But the typical question I ask is like, why do you do what you do? Like, why are you at shutters.com of all places? He looked like he was enjoying his job and happy to be there. Like, surely there's something else I got to know about this. And he said, I used to work in the makeup business. that's what I used to own a makeup company. And basically it was, you know, 3 ingredients in every product, whether we charge $25 or $500 for the same product, just different labeling. And it was all snake oil. It was all just, you know, the wrinkle-free cream, you put it on your face, it's wrinkle-free because it inflames your face. It swells it up and gets rid of the wrinkles, but then you're back to where you started or worse.
Oh, that's
The swelling
interesting.
goes down. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So it was like, I just wanted to work for somewhere that did what they said they did.
Hmm.
And so work for Shutters where they go in, they talk to the homeowner, they understand their aesthetic, they really get inspired by what they love, and they create a unique product for that home. And that just connected with me and my team. Like,
Yeah,
oh, it's
sure.
just inspired by what you love. So inspired by whatever this is. So the campaign was all just like a living room setting, just a close up on a chair and like maybe a lamp, or a close up on a table
Okay.
with certain pots and a wall. And then all you saw was the sun shining through different types of shutters. So you don't even see the product. You just see, you know,
Oh, wow.
it was literally just shutters.com inspired by blank. And the blank was just the room behind it with the lighting coming in. So just in an instant communicating
Oh, that's big
how
time
you
emotion right
complete.
there. That's
Yeah.
emotion.
And
Sure.
exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what gets me excited when you can connect emotionally with a client, you know, and you know, you're not saying one specific thing. Yeah. So someone asked me a while ago, like, why do you love out of home? And my answer was, it's the one medium that can scream to thousands, but also whisper to one. You know, you're screaming to all these people driving by all day, but
I
each
love
and every
that. That's
one of
awesome.
you
I love it.
that sees that, it
Yeah.
whispers to you in a different way, connects emotionally a different way. And this campaign, although it was for some, you know, shutters of all things, not apparently, perceived not to be a sexy thing, we made it really attractive,
That's
really
such a big,
beautiful.
that's such a big idea. That can, I mean, I'm already thinking about all the different ways that that could go. And the other, you know what I mean? It's just when you have such a powerful, simple idea. And I always say to clients, you know, there are a lot of them are, when I ask them, like, what are you really selling? You know, if I would talk to like a mattress place and I would say, you know, what do you guys think you're selling? And they look at me weird. They're like, we sell mattresses? Like, no, no, I think what you should be selling is a good night's sleep. Now, what does that look like?
Exactly.
Right? It's not the focus
Exactly.
on them, it's a focus on the end user. Harley doesn't sell motorcycles, they sell freedom, right?
That's it.
You know, Corona doesn't sell beer, they sell relaxation. You know, everyone is selling something that is probably not what they think they're selling. You know, and if you look, if you can even start there and look at what customers are really selling. I mean, that's a good place to start if you're trying to figure out something, you know, figure out what they're really selling, which makes me, I wanted to ask this question. I don't want to forget this one. What do you look for when you hire someone? When you're going to hire someone to be an art director or a designer to work for OutFront, what are you looking for? What kind of traits?
So, you know, as we're going through, whoever replies or applies, not replies, replies to the job post, you know, obviously we're looking at the work, right? Just
Right.
glancing through, seeing if the work's right. Also like the resume, right? Like not so much reading it, but just visually looking at it, like,
Okay.
and maybe I'm wrong for it. If it is just a quick word typed out resume, I don't really want to look at it, and I might be skipping over it. I want to see that you take pride in who you are,
Okay.
in your craft. So look through the work. If the work is up to snuff where we're like, wow, okay, we definitely want this person here. And you can ask a lot of people that I've interviewed. At the end of the interview, I've always tell them like, look, one, we probably wouldn't be talking if we didn't like the work that we're seeing so far.
Okay.
This talk really is just to make sure, A, that you know what you're talking about. You know, design, whether I don't really care that you know out of home or not, like that, I don't care. Like that, we can teach out of home.
Yep.
But you know design, you're passionate about it, but really the biggest thing is that you're not a jerk. Nobody wants to work with a jerk. If you walk in our Atlanta office, so I don't know, some of our, like on my LinkedIn, I have the word mediocrity and there's an axe.
Right, yeah.
That comes from like a real axe. And so I have the axe head mounted outside of our studios office when you walk in, and it just says, work hard, be humble.
Love it.
And
Love it.
That's what we want.
Yeah, I found that, in my experience, even working at the agency, the higher up you go and the more confident you are in your skills, the better of a person you are. The ego it's almost like the ego goes down as the quality and the confidence you have in your work goes up. You just what you know. What you know, you're confident, and you just that humility. This is a big ego business, man. You got to know that, right? There's a lot of ego at play in this, and that's something that if I could change anything, would be to kind of just let's tamp down the ego, because I think you know this. I think all good creative directors know this. Ideas can come from anywhere and anyone. And you don't have to be, just because you have the title doesn't mean you have to be the one to come up with all the ideas. In fact, it's actually better that you don't. You let your team come up with them, and you just shine a light, and you call, you know what, we're going to go in that direction. I really like, and you kind of nurture that.
Right.
That's how I've always done it. I've noticed that as I got into creative directing and became a creative director, it was not about me at all. It was about the team and helping them grow and giving my knowledge to them and sharing it openly and giving them. I was even to a point where I would give them the best projects, because I wasn't somebody that was going to take all the best. I want you to achieve that. I had one of my designers say to me the one time, we were at an ADDY Awards, and she's like, "How comes you let the artists go up and get the awards?" I'm like, "Well, they worked on them, they did them." They're like, "No, but you did the campaign." I'm like, no. First of all, we did it together, but I want them to have that moment. I want them to, they deserve that. They deserve that recognition. Artists don't get enough recognition as it is. So, the creative director is not going up to get the trophies. It's the artists that are going up to get the trophies. And I just find that, they've always, if your team knows that you're willing to run through a brick wall for them, they'll do anything for you. They'll do anything you ask. And to me, that's where the promised land is. That's where the magic happens. That trust. And you talked about that with a client, but I also think you need to have that with your design team.
Absolutely.
If you're leading a team. The best thing anyone's ever said to me was, Eddy, the best thing anyone's ever said to me, one of my designers said to me once was, she said, you gave me a lot of knowledge, and you helped me tremendously, and you made me a better designer. But the one thing that you did that I will never forget is that you gave me permission to be myself. And I was like, boy, if I, that's it right there, man.
Yeah, we say our best, my best work isn't my work, it's our work. One of my best memories is one of our art directors in LA walking up to receive a gold OBIE, and it was him. Like, he was receiving it, and that was such a prideful moment for me. Absolutely love it. But
well, listen, I checked out your site. Your work is the work that OutFront is doing is it's impressive, and I hope that people will listening to this will go out and check it out. It's what is your website? Just give it.
OutFront.com, and you can check out, if you go to Instagram, you can look at OutFront Studios, and that's specifically our team's work.
And is there anything in terms of that you think people should check out? I guess those stories or those case studies that you have on the site would be something good.
Check out our content hub, and really, like we said, that place shines the light on our people, which is our best feature. Just the different people.
What about that book? What about that book? Is that book available for anyone that you said you wrote?
I can shoot you a link, or the PDF that, if you want to post it wherever, I'll shoot that over to you.
Absolutely. Well. Yeah. Listen, man, I really appreciate you doing this. I know you're busy. And I know we had a little bit of technical problems last week with the storms that I guess went through. Where are you based out of, Atlanta or Louisiana?
I'm based out of Atlanta.
Okay, you're in Atlanta.
From Louisiana. It's supposed to be New York, but it's too cold up there. So no.
Well, I really do appreciate this. Thanks for being on AdYack, and keep doing your thing, man. creativity. We need more of it. We need more people that are going to get those messages out there on those boards, and do good design and keep that mediocrity at bay.
Absolutely, man. This was a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
You be well.
You too. Later.
All right, AdYackers. Hope you enjoyed it, because we have many more great conversations planned and guests lined up ready to yak it up. AdYack is sponsored and produced by ASR Media. Theme song was written and performed by Dan Ross. Location recording was at JT Norman's Design Studio. AdYack is the official podcast of the AAF Greater Lehigh Valley Ad Club. Stay hungry, stay humble. Till next time.
This episode of AdYack is rated O for, oh man, that was good.